What is good, YouTube? My name is Velikan. In this video, I will be talking about Leagues IV, specifically the routes that you can take as a player, because the combat relics will probably have a very significant impact on the areas that you're supposed to go. I will be presenting some routes that you can take. So I made this video twice already. This time around, I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently. I'm going to try and keep things a lot shorter as before. If it were up to me, I would do like 4-hour deep dives, but ultimately I don't think that's what the people want to see. So we're going to keep this within about 20 minutes. So we've got some assumptions for this video. The area tasks are going to be like Leagues 2 and Leagues 3. Jagex hasn't been confirming anything. I recently learned that they are likely not to confirm anything up to a couple of hours before Leagues 4 starts, so we have nothing to go on. That's also why I'm doing this video, because the league area tasks definitely have a huge impact on the presented routes that I would like to show you. And in my previous videos, I misjudged a couple of areas. People have been saying that Piety, for instance, is overvalued by me. I would like to talk about that in a second. The second assumption is we're going to get 2 times attack speed for a combat style. If we're not, this video is not obsolete, not just yet, but it will change a lot of things that I have to say. So it really depends on what we're going to get. So that's an assumption. Two other assumptions are that weapon specialist and last recall both exist. So let's dive right into it. The melee route. I would argue Asgarnia is arguably mandatory. I've said this before in my previous videos. It's still the same. It gives you defenders, bandos, BGS, SGS, prims, maxcapes, Torva. Torva is available with just Asgarnia according to Mod Halo. There's a screenshot of him saying this in my previous video if you really wanted to have it in writing. It theoretically is possible to skip Asgarnia if you really don't like God Wars Dungeons by going Mauritania. If Last Recall is a highly contested relic in Leagues 4 because it was free in Leagues 2, Mauritania becomes more interesting to me personally. That's because bosses in Mauritania are not last recallable. Inquisitor plus a two-handed weapon is extremely valid. However, please keep in mind, please, Inquisitor is extremely hard to get. It's going to be a very significant grind. Barrows before Inquisitor is just good. It's good enough. So, Asgarnia is valued highly because of the Bandos Godsword plus Weapon Specialist plus Last Recall combination. It's that simple. You'll be going to your POH. You're going to be getting your spec and your prayer back up. You're going to be last recalling into maybe Bandos, BGS him down, and that's that. You kill him very fast. You're going to be doing that for the majority of the bosses in Leagues. So, in my previous video, I've said that Asgarnia plus Kandarin plus Mauritania is the best route that you can take. It's likely to be top DPS. I have been critiqued, and I've been told that I've been overvaluing Piety. This, to a certain extent, is true. I have been overvaluing Piety. That's because I consider Piety to be top DPS. And I mentioned the word optimal, and optimal means either best or most favorable. And let me tell you, Piety is likely to be the best, but it's in Kandarin, and Kandarin is definitely not most favorable. So, I will be presenting some routes that do not include Kandarin in the next sheet. So, if you really don't want to go Mauritania, you can go Wilderness instead. So Asgarnia, Kandarin, Wilderness. I think it's on par with the best route because of Voidwaker. However, I will be presenting a route without Kandarin that includes the Voidwaker, which is probably even stronger. So personally, I would definitely skip Kandarin. The reason why is Kandarin has Apatol Agility Lapse. It has Barbarian Assault, even though that will be buffed by Relics, people have been mentioning. But it also has Chompy Bird Hunting, which is something I don't want to do in Leagues, not in a temporary game mode. By God, please no. So I would personally definitely 100% skip Kandarin. Just because the area tasks are likely to be too annoying to be worth it. It's that simple. Then, without Kandarin and Piety, you can think about constructing a route differently. You either take Asgarnia or Mauritania as your base area. Keep in mind that Mauritania is a very tricky area because of the drop rates. Then, with Asgarnia or Mauritania as a base, you either use Desert plus Wildy or Desert plus Current to go on top of your base pick. Desert plus Wilderness gives you Lightbearer plus Voidwaker. I think these two items alone are strong enough to be a valid combination. If we're going to get Weapon Specialist in combination with Lightbearer, then the Voidwaker is going to go bonkers. It might even beat top DPS. It might be better than Piety. Then alternatively, you could go Desert plus Karen and Fremenic, or Fremenic actually. Specifically if you don't like the Wilderness like myself. This is a Soul Reaper route. So the Desert by itself opens up the Soul Reaper. However, you would need Karen or Fremenic to beat the Duke or Fordorfis, which are both melee bosses, to get your hands on the Soul Reaper relatively easily. And then you'll be running around with a 3-tick Soul Reaper, which is probably going to be very strong. With Asgarnia or Mauritania as a base, feel free to go any other combination. Specifically with Asgarnia, you cannot go wrong. Asgarnia by itself is enough to have a good time in leagues as a melee user. So, in green, you have the summary, Asgarnia or Mauritania, plus Desert plus Wilderness, or plus Desert plus Current / Fremenic. I enjoy the Mauritania Desert Current idea because that would give you 3 different raids, and I think Draining Strikes becomes more interesting in raids. And then with Soul Reaper and Lightbearer, I don't think Weapon Specialist is needed, but I'm not sure because I don't own a Soul Reaper in the main game, so I don't exactly know how it'll work. But I like the idea of going Soul Reaper Draining Strikes, and I just like that idea. Ranged route. Asgarnia gives us Arma, ACB, ZCB, ZVAMPs. It's a very strong pick. It's an extremely strong pick, actually. Kandarin gives Zenites plus Heavy Ballista, and I will be talking about this in a second. Desert gives Masori. You can fortify your Masori, however, fortifying is not necessary. Fortifying does nothing for your offensive capabilities, only defensive capabilities. And since DPS is king, we don't really care about defense. Fremenic gives Archer Rings. I think these are very weak because of the relic bonus accuracy. You don't really need the Archer Ring. Keep in mind it's not imbued either. Mauritania gives Barrows. Barrows is okay, but only really Carols is good for you, and you can leap towards armor gear with just Black D'hide. You don't need Carols. So I don't really see a use for Mauritania in your range route at all. Then Tyranwin. Tyranwin gives the Blowpipe, Bofa, and Crystal Armor. I would say Tyranwin needs Asgarnia or Desert. I will be talking about this in a second. Karen gives T-Bow and Rigor. Rigor is probably incredible. T-Bow is strong, but T-Bow is a 5-tick weapon, and I don't think it's going to get buffed as hard because it's going to end up as a 3-tick weapon. And then ultimately, or lastly I should say, Wilderness gives Web Weaver. That might be actually a fun weapon and a fun spec weapon at that. So about darts, I just mentioned that Tyranwin needs Asgarnia or Desert. This is because the Desert allows you to smith darts. Without Desert, you cannot smith darts. As an alternative to smithing your darts, you can go Asgarnia, and that will give you access to Amethyst darts. And you do not need Tourist Trap in order to craft Amethyst darts. And I would say that you would need Desert or Asgarnia to source your Blowpipe darts. People have been mentioning that you can get your darts from Crystal Implings or Mythal Dragons or Vorkath. My response to that is that if you want to do that, I consider you a quote-unquote pro. The same people that are mentioning that they have been using Crystal Implings or Vorkath to source their darts are also mentioning in the same breath that they got Dragon Cup in Leagues 2. I don't want to diss them because these people are not wrong, but I cannot in my right mind recommend that to the average viewer. If you are on the fence about this and you don't really know what to do, let me just lay it out for you. You save 90% of your ammo with your ranged relic. If you go Fremenic, you save 98% of your ammo. The Blowpipe is going to be a 1-tick weapon, and you can just simply do the math. So let me take Vorkath, for example. Vorkath drops somewhere between 10 and 50 Dragon Dart tips, I think, and it drops up to 100 Rune Darts. If you get 50 Dragon Darts with Assembler, you will those 50 darts will last you 25 real-life minutes, which sounds like a lot, but you have to consider, do you want to go and have to farm Vorkath in order for you to source your darts? Or and I know this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to sit in the mining guild for one evening and have enough darts to last me the entire league. That's not a pro approach, I'll admit that. But my conclusion basically is if you do want to go blowpipe, but you don't want to go desert or Asgarnia, that's definitely 100% possible, but you just have to think it through. Because for you as an individual, it might be a mistake. That's it. So blowpipe, like I said, Tyranwin plus either desert or Asgarnia. Asgarnia probably being slightly stronger because of the Z-Vamps. Plus Current, which is probably going to be the best route because Current gives you Rigor and Thralls. Then alternatively, you can just strip away Current and you'll have a free pick. You can go anywhere. Your gear will be Blowpipe plus Arma or Masori. Kandarin will offer you Zenite gear. Fremennik opens up the Venator ring if you go desert. Current gives you T-Bow, Rigor, and Thralls. Super strong. I say that Asgarnia is preferred because of Z-Vamps, but if you want to go Fremennik, you might have to consider desert because that opens up the Venator ring, which gives you range strength. So, about Current, Rigor is super strong, but about the T-Bow specifically, grinding out the T-Bow is still a significant effort. The drop rate, I've just taken some points off of Reddit because I don't solo chambers myself. I took 32k, that gives you 1 in 930 in the main game. In leagues, that will be 1 in 310. You can go 400 chambers rates dry and not have a T-Bow. My conclusion is, don't bank on a T-Bow as a main weapon, period. Also, and this is probably the most important point that I can make, the T-Bow is a 5-tick weapon and the Bofa is a 4-tick weapon. The Bofa is likely to be a lot stronger than your T-Bow in leagues. And also, Thralls are just good for any route. It's very simple. Then, the Ballista. Kandarin will give you Zenites, but also opens up the heavy Ballista. The Ballista, including the Javelins, are available completely within Kandarin, so Kandarin alone is enough to run around with a Ballista. If you opt for the heavy ballista as your primary weapon, all you need is armor. Mauritania for Carols, Desert for Masori, Asgarnia for Armadale. And then maybe Tyranwin for Crystal, but I would not recommend that. And then you should consider Current for Rigor and Thralls. Like I said, Ballista only really needs armor. Out of the options that you have, I would say that Kandarin Desert Fremennik is your strongest pick. You will end up in a Ballista, Anguish, Masori, and Assembler. Assembler does not save your Javelins, but it does give you a little bit of ranged offense. But it will also give you a Venator ring. So that's quite valuable, I would say. So, the recap, Kandarin Desert Fremennik for the Ballista route, the Venator ring route I just mentioned. Then Tyranwin Desert or Asgarnia plus Current, which is a blowpipe route. The alternatives are Tyranwin Desert Asgarnia plus a free pick, or Kandarin Mauritania Asgarnia or Desert, which is basically, it sounds like a lot, but it's just Ballista plus anywhere that gives you armor plus a free pick. So that those two options actually give you free pick. And then in blue, which is the thing that I do have to mention, that's what people have been telling me, Tyranwin plus Fremennik plus free pick, which I would call the quote-unquote professional route. The reason why is because you have to source your darts. I would say that you do need Fremennik because Fremennik gives you your assembler and your assembler does save darts on your blowpipe. So I would say Tyranwin, Fremennik then actually do go hand in hand. So about the DT2 rings, you need the Desert for DT2 and you need Fremennik for the rings. Leviathan is free because it's a Mistlin. Then you get the Duke in Fremennik, the Whisperer in Asgarnia, and Verdorfus in Current. The Ultor ring, which is the best melee ring, is in Desert, Current, Fremennik, which I don't think is a valid combination for melee builds. The Bellator ring is Desert, Asgarnia plus Fremennik, which is an alternative to the Ultor ring. It gives you plus 20 slash and plus 6 strength. The Bellator ring does drop from the Whisperer. And I'm not sure if the Whisperer is meleeable. You mage her in the main game. I don't know if 25% accuracy increase from your relics is enough for you to be able to melee her. But grinding it out wouldn't be that big of a problem, I don't think. The Magus ring It's in Desert plus Fremennik, and with Kandarin, this is an extremely valid route. I will be talking about this in a second. And then the Venator ring, I've been talking about this before, is in Desert plus Fremennik, and it's valid, but it just needs a main weapon. You can go Asgarnia for your ZCB, Kandarin for Ballista, and Tyranwin for Blowpipe. And Tyranwin Desert Fremennik is actually a super good route as well. Magic. Magic is interesting in my opinion because it skips God Wars dungeon bosses, which I think is a boring area. The interesting zones for Magic is Desert for Tumakan Ancients and Verdus, and Kandarin for Trident, Zenites, and Warped Scepter. I did mention Ibans in parentheses. I don't think you can get Ibans in Kandarin this time around. I think they might have put Ibans in Tyranwin. I'm not 100% sure, but it also doesn't matter because Warped Scepter is a good alternative. Previously, Mauritania was a must because Arims was best in slot. This is not the case for Leagues 4. Desert and Kurend are now providing alternatives in terms of gear. Desert gives Verdus Robes. Fremennik plus Desert gives Magus Ring, which is actually worth it. The TLDR is Verdus plus Saturated Heart plus Magus Ring is probably on par with Ancestral Augury and Thralls. Ancestral gives plus 6% magic damage. Augury does nothing for max damage. Verdus only gives plus 3 unless you're using Ancients. Magus gives plus 2, which is plus 5 in total. But Fremennik also gives you the Saturated Heart. Saturated Heart gives you plus 3 levels over the normal Imbued Heart, which is likely to be better than the missing 1% damage difference from Ancestral. And also Fremennik gives you the Ancient Scepter, which is a plus 5% magic damage increase. So, long story short, I would just say that Ancestral is on par with Verdus. It's just that. Keep in mind, though, that you're going to have to grind both Verdus, the Saturated Heart, the Magus Ring, and then if you want to go Kurend, you're going to have to grind Ancestral. So it's a grind either way. Then Tyranwin gives Trident of the Swamp, which was good in Leagues 2, but it's the only thing that's in Tyranwin for Mage. I would argue that's not worth it. Kurend gives Ancestral plus Augury. Augury does not increase max damage. Some people think it does, it doesn't. Mauritania gives Arims, Sanguinesti Staff, and Nightmare Staves. Sang and Nightmare Staves are actually quite strong. Specifically the Harm Staff, I think it is, which makes the normal spellbook 4-tick instead of 5-tick, which is an incredibly strong DPS increase in Leagues if we get half attack speed. And then Wilderness is worth mentioning because it gives us the God Capes and the Accursed Scepter, which acts like a magic Dragon Warhammer. Specking with the Accursed Scepter drains the enemy defense, magic defense by 15%, which is not nothing. Okay, Magic has probably the least use for Weapon Specialist. You do not need a BGS or a Dragon Warhammer. And you cannot continuously keep specking the Accursed Scepter, so I don't say Weapon Specialist is worth it at all. Without Mauritania in the form of an Eldritch Staff, which is the staff that heals you, I think, Weapon Specialist is actually completely useless. Kandarin, on the other hand, gives you Occult plus Bracelet. These are the two best upgrades for Magic, DPS armor-wise. Kandarin, therefore, is strongly recommended in your route. From here, you can just pick a weapon and some armor, and you'll be set for Leagues. So, what are the routes that I have identified? Probably the best route is Desert Kandarin Fremennik. It gives you Tumakan, Verdus, Ancients, Tormented, Occult, Trident/Warped, Magus Ring, and Saturated Heart. It's an extremely strong route for Magic. Then you can swap out Fremennik for the Wilderness and go Desert Kandarin Wilderness, which is on par with the best route. It will give you a God Cape and an Accursed Scepter instead of the Magus Ring and the Saturated Heart, which is probably on par with Fremennik. Then you have Desert Kandarin Kurend, which will give you Kodai, which is not that useful, but Ancestral definitely is. Augury is okay, and Thralls are probably good, just good. Unless Thralls get buffed by any relics, then Thralls will be a lot better maybe. And then Kurend is not just on par with the best route, but because of the Thrall buff, it might actually be the best route. So those are your three options. Then you have Mauritania, Kandarin, and Kurend. That's because Mauritania gives you Sangstaff, which is very strong. if you can get your hands on the Harm Staff, which is 4 tick, then the Tome of Fire actually might become interesting. The Tome of Fire, in my opinion, is only interesting if there is a relic that will negate the charges used by the Tome of Fire, because you will be burning through Tome of Fire charges if Jagex doesn't give us anything for the Tome of Fire. If they do give us something like a 90% charge saving or something along those lines, then a 4-tick Harm Staff plus a Tome of Fire is going to be very, very strong. Extremely strong, actually. Maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe even best. Then Mauritania Kandarin Wilderness is a valid alternative, because you'll be getting your hands on a God Cape and an Accursed Scepter, and you'll be running around with a Sanguinesti Staff, most likely. So this is a different thing I would like to talk about. This ties into if you want a Dragon Cup or not. I took some screenshots of the Leagues 3 tasks for some different areas, and something really stood out, and that was the percentages of people that have been clearing these tasks. And of course, this is slightly a popularity contest, but a couple of things really stood out. So what exactly are we looking at? The first thing that I would like to point out in the top left is Equip Full Armadillo, 11%. Equip Full Bandos, 25% of the players have completed that. Equip Full Inquisitors, less than 0.1%. So I've been talking about Mauritania for a hot minute in the melee section. If you want to go Mori, know what you're getting into. Getting Inquisitor is not easy whatsoever. The next thing is, for instance, Fremennik, in comparison to the Alchemical Hydra. The Alchemical Hydra gives a bunch of points for only 300 KC. Forcath, in comparison, needs to be killed 750 times. The same thing is true for Dagonoth Kings, which is not on this list, but you had to kill Dagonoth Kings 1,000 times each, which is a lot, and this is also in the Fremennik area. So if you're going Fremennik, you should know what you're getting into. Basically, the point I'm trying to make is you have to take a very good look at the tasks in the areas that you want to go to. Kourend is a very obvious problem for me personally. I don't know how to solo Chambers of Xeric in the main game. However, in Leagues, a lot of points are behind speedrunning Chambers. That makes Kourend a problem for me if I want a Dragon Cup this time around. One last point I definitely want to make is don't take a look at the bad tasks. Take a look at the good tasks as well, because just because an area has bad tasks doesn't mean that it doesn't have good tasks. So the bad tasks don't make for a bad area per se. So keep that in mind. And then for me personally, what am I going to do? I need to decide whether or not I want to learn Chambers or get my hands on a Dragon Trophy. If I want a Dragon Trophy, I'm better off not picking Kourend. If I want to learn Chambers, I have to pick Kourend, so that's a very important decision that I have to make. Also, I really was eyeballing Magic. However, I really don't want to go Kandarin. I just did 2k Apatol Agility laps in the main game. That wasn't fun, I can tell you. Unless Jagex gives us relics that makes those tasks easier, or they give us other tasks in Kandarin to do for a lot of points, then I'm probably not going to go Kandarin this time around. So that would put me in the ranged or melee areas. As for melee, I would definitely consider a Soul Reaper route. I think that might be a very fun thing to do, but I'm not sure. And for ranged, that would mean I would be going a blowpipe route, because the Ballista puts you in Kandarin as well. Okay, for the near future. When Jagex confirms the relics, I will likely do another video. I will not be doing a video like this anymore. I think I've said what I wanted to say about all the potential routes that you can take. If there's any mistakes in this video, I hope there aren't any, but I'm sorry. What you have to do is just read the description, please. So if it doesn't have too many mistakes, this will be the last video on this topic. And that's it. Thank you for watching. It was a lot longer, again, as I intended. But there we go. Bye-bye, and see you next time.